Men of Reddit who proposed, and she said no. What happened afterwards with your life? My mum actually said no to my dad's proposal when they were younger, not because they weren't in love, but because she wasn't sure if it was something she actually wanted to do, rather than something that society expected of her or whatever. They still stayed together and had kids, hence why you're reading this now. And then when my dad was terminally ill a few years ago, my mum plucked up the courage and asked him, just to get her back after all those years. He said no, before taking her up on the offer a few days later. He died a happy man. Edit. Holy shit. I uploaded this before bed and haven't been on Reddit since. Just flicked it on to see all of your lovely responses. Really does mean the world to hear people taking some joy from their story. Thanks so much. For a bit more context on this, it was actually 2 declined proposals, not just one. Both pre-children too, so let's say I'm lucky. Also, when they did get married, it wasn't purely an action for the estate or whatever. They already had wills etc sorted. It was just one of those last great days as a family. In fact, my sister and I were the only 2 present at the registry office. And when I say office, they literally squeezed us into one of the registrar's offices as there was a big waiting list for weddings and we didn't know how long he had. He died 3 months later. So we were all hugely grateful for them for helping us out like that. Oh, I have a story about this. My friend A had been with his girlfriend B for years. So he decided he wanted to propose. What he didn't know is that B was also thinking about proposing to him. A proposed first. And B freaked out because she had already set her proposal and bought a ring. So she said no. Over the next week, B freaked out more and more and refused to answer A's calls and messages. A then decided to use the money he had saved up to buy a plane ticket to Europe. What was supposed to be a 3-month trip through Western Europe turned out to be a year-long trip around the world. One day, A says that he's coming back, and B decides to go and wait for him at the airport and propose to him there. It turns out that, while being in Peru, A met a girl and they fell in love almost immediately and got married in Peru. 5 years later, A and his Peruvian wife are still happily married and recently had a baby. While B hasn't still quite forgiven herself for ruining her relationship with A. I don't understand why B would say no if that was what she wanted to. We met in her home country of Germany while I was traveling. I knew I was in love. We dated long distance for a while, me flying to Europe, her flying to the US. I suggested marriage so we could be together. She said no a few times. I didn't press, but I was patient and not being pushy. I knew she was worth the wait. Then it hit her, that's how we could be together. If we got married, we could live in a country together. The difficulties of being born on a different patch of dirt. A few years later, I'm still married to my best friend and living with her in Germany. Not all no's stay no. Life goes on. She had cancer. I said we should get married because I had full medical coverage from my work. She said no, and over time we grew apart. Haven't talked to her in 15 years. Don't know if she died. I know a couple who did just that. He proposed in order to give her citizenship and health insurance so she could remain here and get cancer treatment she desperately needed. They stayed married for about 15 years and he even adopted her son. But they never lived together or were romantically involved. Years later, they divorced when he met the woman of his dreams and wanted to get married. They are all very close friends, with no drama. She lived and is a university professor now. He is in another state with the woman of his dreams. That's actually beautiful. My dad proposed to a woman who said no. My dad was a violent alcoholic, and she said she couldn't be with him unless he got clean. Took him a little while, but he did it. He wound up meeting my mom through a matchmaker and they've been married 25 years. If that woman never said no to him, he never would have gotten clean. It was the lowest point in his life, but it all brought him to my mom, who makes him happier than ever. My dad talks to her sometimes. She got married to someone else, and they had a son who died from a medical condition. Well, that story went well until the last 6 words. We lived together for another 6 years until she changed her mind and told me that I should ask again. We were engaged for over a year and got married in 1991. We are still married, have 3 children, and are both still very much in love. Why the initial no? Didn't have enough XP. We received a letter from the immigration office saying that she was lacking some documents. At the moment we were stressed, both of us, with work and study, and none of us were sufficiently fluent in German to decipher this kind of language. We went to the university office for foreign students. The lady in charge translated to us the letter badly, telling us that even presenting the documents they would proceed with the deportation process. We panicked. Looking for some more help, we ended in the city hall. With the adrenaline rush, I proposed to her in quite a loud voice, if we get married, could we stop the deportation? I asked the poor guy in the information office. I can't remember if he gave us an answer. We want to marry her. Will you marry me? She started laughing. I started laughing. The guy in the office gave us the telephone to the pertinent department and asked us to call. We went out of the city hall and we couldn't stop laughing. She said to me, well, thank you, but let's wait a bit. After the weekend we went to immigration office and the people there explained which documents were missing, how to get them. She wasn't denied the visa and we kept living in the way we planned. It was intense and, in retrospective, really funny. Addendum: we are not married and never planned, but we live together. She got a job that provides her with a visa. Soon she will present herself to citizenship exam. Dated a woman for over 2 years and popped the question. First time she said I don't know. A couple months later I asked her again. She said maybe. I was pretty bent out of shape. But then I found out she was sleeping with several of my friends, so I dodged a bullet there really. I asked her right out of high school, but she wasn't ready. We stayed together, went to college at the same school, spent the first year in separate dorms, then moved in together. Got married a few years later. Our 20th is coming up. My mom rejected my father the first 2 times. Lol. There was no real hard feelings between them. I guess my mother was just not ready for marriage yet. She ended up proposing to him. My grandmother and mother sewed a suit for their dog to wear and attached a sign around his neck with a ring that read, "Will you marry me?" Then she sent the dog out into the kitchen to beg for scraps while my father was preparing dinner. The next thing she heard was a very concerned voice, "Sautin Gorner. The dog is asking me to marry him." Cue absolute hysterics. My dad said yes to the proposal. My human dad and my human mom are still married 2 decades later. The fact that I even had to clarify this is severely disappointing. TSK. 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 Edit 1. My parents found the photo. They are just getting it sent, so stay tuned. And I will post the pet tax edit too. My god. You guys are more impatient than kids at an ice cream truck. Here is your pet tax. Haha. http imga.com//mkufra4 edit 3. You're la savage. Give the old good boy a break. Edit 4. I find it humorous that my photo has more views than this thread has upvotes. So I guess I just wanna say hello to all of the lurkers out there. I hope you all have a wonderful morning/day/evening/night. I swear I'm not trying to be passive aggressive. Just realize that it could come across that way. My mother turned my father down, but didn't outright break up with him. She just wasn't sure about the marriage idea. She valued her independence and was nervous about commitment. No hard feelings, though. He called up the next day when she'd had more time to think about it, and she said yes after all. They celebrated 32 years of marriage last month. She said yes on the second proposal and now we are divorced. Edit. Reddit is such a weird place. All the carefully thought out posts and comments get zero recognition, and then this random off the cuff remark is my most liked comment. Glad you all got a kick out of it. For those wondering, I've been single for a year. I spent last night with a smart, beautiful woman and had a blast. Life is good. After reading all these stories, I laughed when I read this. Not at your misfortune, but at how succinct it was. She said yes as I had a special occasion planned, one of those observation wheels, and I proposed at the very top and we were in our way to a family event and I had a ring made and everything. Then a few days later she said no. Everything fell apart. I was distraught. We continued dating for a while, but it was long distance, other side of the world. When I visited it would be super awkward. Eventually he dad kicked me out, was flying standby, and was stuck in an airport for 4 days. Took me years to recover. Now I'm happily married, and I'm glad it never worked out. I was not in a good place when I met her, and her family was super controlling. It would never have worked. The woman I married is super cool, and is my best friend. Turned out better than expected. She had said she wasn't really a fan of marriage, so I thought proposing non-marriage might be well received, and I wanted us to be together for the rest of our lives. So I asked her not to marry me. She said no. We have been married for 10 years. Pulled the old reverse card on her.